Okie doke. So there we are. So this is actually supposed to be a take two, part two of where I was. And we're starting to talk about the meat of some of my report and what I failed to say in the previous video. This is part two of the biological invasion testimony. And my name's Letty. And so the first part, I forgot to actually mention that I actually had to pay someone who has a military background or knew how to test biological and physiological system for symptoms and for also presence of biosensors or anything electrical that may be suspected or may have been suspected at one point or another. Now, I had to go through a series of testings, okay, examination, go through the mental health examination, go through the psychological whatever with some friends in therapy and in residence and in therapy and psychology. I had to really examine myself, like I said. I had to go through the spiritual first, just take that out of the equation. I had to go through going to get my brain scan, get my MRIs, CAT scan, figure out, because I had this tremendous, like I said to you, after that those surgeries, I started to feel symptoms that were just completely irregular, completely out of the ordinary, and completely out of sync with anything that I've ever experienced. And for me, it was just either it was a case of like deep, strange possession. It was a case of just neurological damage somehow. And we just could not place it. And all my tests, as far as neurological tests, just rang through. They were positive. They had nothing whatsoever. There was just some instances where I knew that certain things from my childhood that I remember when I was before foster care and before the sleep study and the surgery and stuff. I could remember. After the scenarios, I could not. And that was just a strange thing. But anyway, just to tell you that I ruled out everything else before I got to this place, where I went to a therapist friend of mine and she recommended this group. This group, by the way, comprised of hundreds of people now to this day. We're talking about thousands now in the country, okay, who have been done wrong to, biologically invaded somehow, and so many things that you guys have no idea. And I hope that this video, I hope that testimonies like this would actually open people's eyes to really what's going on. For people who are not involved or who don't want to be involved in going the wrong way, participating, contributing to ill intent and ill treatments and abuses and torture, oppression and imprisonment, enslavement, and things like that that go on behind closed door, behind the scene, using camouflage excuses or using front excuses, okay, in your neighborhood, in your whatever region, to actually perpetrate, evil activities and wrongdoings. So let's put it that way. I did get myself tested. And the test itself is called a SCADA test. It's a collection of data. It's really something that you have to use some equipment to really get through the skin, the epidermal skin level, get through to even the joints and to beyond that, to figure out if there's anything whatsoever in your system that may rank through as misplaced. So that test was a test that really went deep in my system to figure out what exactly could be wrong. And I was referred to these people because I attended a conference that someone referred me to. A therapist friend of mine referred me to another person who in turn referred me to somebody else who started to talk to me about, have I ever been in the military? Have I ever been in the police? Have I ever been married to a military person? What exactly did I sign up for as far as experiment? What did I sign up as far as trials for clinical stuff? And I said, well, what are you talking about? This thing don't make sense to me. I live in a subsidy apartment, a small one in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I know that some things happen there that I just cannot, have no recollection of. But for the most part, I didn't kill anybody. I didn't do anything wrong. I know that, listen, I'm a believer today. I try science to some extent. And so I like proof. I like things just visual. So I talked to my friend and she said to me, there are three people or some people who came here with the same exact story. Because I went to her and I was like, whoa, wait a minute. I'm having holographic dreams. I have something happen where I just come kind of like you just dreaming. And honestly, before that, I was starting to develop I think because I just come to the Lord Jesus Christ, and I was just starting to develop my gift in terms of prophetic dreaming was just starting to get activated. I was actually dreaming things that are actually real about my family and things that I knew were actually given to me in a divine way to actually intercede, because that's what we do with prophetic dreams. We intercede, we pray, we get into the Word, we try to get more insight from God, and then we pray. And the role of, in my opinion, of visions or dreams or someone having sight somehow, spiritually speaking, if you're on the right spiritual side, is to actually pray, to intercede for your community, your church, your family, your friends, whatever comes to mind. It's just an indication. You can go through dream interpretation, vision interpretation, just ask God to help you with that. And usually, in most cases, is to pray. To pray, because prayers are powerful, and prayers can actually break down the spiritual negative notions. So anyway, I went to my friend again, and I did all the whole 9 yards. And finally, I got to these people who were ex-Navy, ex-Marine, ex-la la la. There's just some scenarios, some stories that were just mind-boggling. I just could not figure out what I was hearing. And this was first for me. And I was like, what is going on? Well, these people have gone through this? All this thing they're talking about? What are they talking exactly? Some have gone through, being attacked and by invisible weapons. And I was like, what is that? Never heard of anything like this. Is crazy. The things that I've heard did not make sense. At the end of a conference, we called it scanning. So people were lined up and scanned them. They were scanned. So their bodies were scanned, their head was scanned. All of us were scanned from head to toes. And I asked my friend, I said, well, what exactly are we getting scanned for? Well, she said, well, some people are just taken advantage of for non-consensual experimentation and medical as a front, and then in other cases just as bionic, biological, whatever. I said, what are you talking about? I was really confused. I swear, I was really confused. I was just like, I didn't understand what was going on. And after the conference, I went through everybody, like what everybody was doing. I went and, they had this kind of like setup. I wouldn't say like the TSA setup, but they had a setup similar where you have to go through a certain space. And then they have these devices, the long devices with meters and different things. And then you have to go through and they'll just scan your body from head to toes. And some rang green, some negative, some positive. And for a couple of us, we're put aside and pretty much said, well, you must have gone through some military something or something happened to you. And I said, I don't think that anything happened to me. I know that there's some bizarre thing that happened to me, but you're talking about being surgically operated on and something was put inside me, or what is this you're talking about? So finally the guy said, well, yeah, I can't tell you more right now, but there's just some positive thing. He's actually put some dots with like those little, just little stickers. He put stickers here. He put some stickers over here. They put some stickers over here on the side of my ears. I mean, different places, and everybody was getting sticker, and I'm like, what is that for? Because the meter was pretty much blowing up, going like zzz, meaning something is wrong with your body. Electrically speaking, your electrical whatever readings, a little, like I would say, I thought inhuman, if you ask me, but a little abnormal. There's some sort of abnormality going on. And I just couldn't believe what they were saying. I was like, wow, what are you guys saying? So I left that conference having something, but not having something, because I was like, this is too much for me. These people are crazy. I'm not going back there. I'm just going to completely disconnect with this person that connected me there. And mind you, this person actually also had a psychology background. And the only thing that, and also was also someone who was actually into research studies. Okay. And the person who referred the two of us or the three of us to the conference was also majoring into psychology and counseling to this day. That person and these people actually have their own facility, their own places of service where they actually see people, and they are mentally sound, and they give treatments, prescriptions and stuff to people, and they know what they're talking about. So to say that the irrelevant sources and irrelevant references is untrue. They knew exactly what they were talking about, and they heard a story, and for them, they send us there so that we can find a solution. But in all things where you unveil truth and when you find things out, there's always elements that come and infiltrate, and that's been our experience, that people will come and infiltrate just to kind of try to dismantle whatever truth what we came up with or whatever information was received or what was obtained. Quite a few times it happened, and for me it was just an encouragement to just draw away from all that. But it didn't really help me because I started to become as isolated. I started to become more like ostracized by whoever was behind it. And again, I mentioned in the first part who was behind it. Obviously, you have to have some sort of military background, some physical, physician, doctor, medical, whatever, field background, some knowledge. Obviously, in research or in some sort of technology, nano, whatever, high tech, what to do. I'll get later on into the details of the things that were actually shown to me and some of the revelation that came to me, and the details of the things that are possible as far as the human body and how genetics can actually be modified, how DNA can be modified, or synthetic DNA can actually be obtained, and a different variation from the Brain Initiative Koch brothers sponsored along with the President Obama and Amy Gunt. And Amy Gunn is the president of the University of Pennsylvania. She actually led one of the committees, a few of them, over the 5 years period. A committee called the Bioethics Committee, appointed by the president himself. And mind you, that was right around the time that the Brain Initiative was coming out. And what is the Brain Initiative? I'm not going to get into it. You can just Google. I said Google, oh my God. No, you can just bang or DuckDuckGo, which are two other search engines. You can just go and just search the Brain Initiative, and then put next to it President Obama, or you can put next to it Koch brothers, or you can put next to it MIT. And that's where this initiative started, where they're trying to supposedly find cures for dementia, Hutchinson disease, and a variety of things. Meanwhile, in that entire scenario, we have crooked people, kind of like Hitler's doctors, wolf in sheep clothing type of thing, who are always damaging and ruining some of the good intents that people come up with to actually heal the brain or heal people of actually some serious cases or some serious disorders of the brain or whatever else could be. And I'm not completely disregarding the fact that there's research studies out there that are actually done to actually cause create solutions. But just as there are people out there trying to create solutions, there even if anything, there are more people out there, remarkably enough, trying to just hurt humanity and trying to really completely invade people and use people and enslave people through the science, through the technology and things that God has bestowed upon them. Knowledge that the God has bestowed upon them. But anyway, going back to the conference, coming back from it, and I already said to you, there's another thing that you could search, another word that you can plug in. I'm not going to give you all the details. Maybe later on, after I post this on YouTube, I'm going to just put all the references down. I'm going to list them there, all the paperwork I'm looking into. Beside my own vocal testimony here, there's some references, some books you can even take a look at, and questions. You can post it. You can post so we can actually have a discussion on some of these issues. Please, no rudeness. Anyway, so I was getting to tell you that after I ran away from this group, 2 years later, I found this investigator group. It's comprised of a psychologist who's worked with like people from Vietnam who have trauma, and even wrote a book about how he was able with his team to really help those who were traumatized from the war and different things and different techniques used in terms of psychology and therapeutic methods to actually heal people, so they don't stay in that bondage, that traumatic bondage, which for me, what really resolved that was Jesus Christ, and still is Jesus Christ. But I understand that he's been very effective in a lot of cases with people who have had serious traumas from wars, and so he was also part of this investigative team, and he could actually assess someone within a couple of minutes to an hour or a few days or a few sessions to figure out if that person indeed is completely gone cuckoo, psychologically, or has been made to fear, be intimidated, and is in a state of psychosis. So those things had to be ruled out too, as far as I'm concerned, and other people that were concerned, so we could get to the bottom of whether or not those things were also in your mind, or things were actually the things that were done to you. So in my case, it was pretty clear that things were done to me. So the team had has a psychologist. The team has a doctor who was actually a surgeon too. And by the way, he is a surgeon who can operate anything. And I'm sure if it's the right amount of money, you can probably get a hold of him and just schedule something to get done. And I'm sure, I hope to God that he knows also many other people. And then we have another woman, a person who actually has a laboratory. I wouldn't say lab, but a toxicology center, kind of like a la Mayo Center, but what she has is a high-tech, state-of-the-art technological devices and chambers where you can go and get some tests done that will run your entire body system in, and then figure out what kind of metals are in your system, what kind of stones or rocks, whatever elements, minerals are in your system, and if something is out of place, even if your DNA is a little off and your bloodline goes through back to the Egyptians or whatever the case may be. She has all the tools. You just have to have the money, is what I realized. But we did some preliminary stuff that was pretty close. And along with that, we have another person with a scanner, a high-grade military scanner. We can actually scan someone based on electrical system, I guess, a method called SCADA. And that you can also search SCADA, SCADA, examination. There's a book on Amazon about that. It costs a lot of money, but I think if you call them, they're able to actually help you get into the examination so that you're able to also acquire the knowledge, and you can in turn into someone who can go and help other people figure out what was done to them, and if or not, some other things were introduced into their system. And what exactly those things are doing, whether they're monitoring, tracking, doing some sort of telemedicine, or affecting the bloodstream, or just are there to detect disease or prevent disease, whatever the case may be. For the most cases that we've heard, they're there to actually annoy the heck out of you, completely enslave you, keep you in bondage. They've never done anything good. So, at least for my case. And I don't really know exactly, we can tell what exactly, but we know that something different was introduced. And so that's why we're able to figure out with this team of investigators. And I would recommend them. I have the numbers. I think that they're still working. Some have taken time away to spend time with their family, but I have phone numbers and contact information for anyone who's interested. I could give that to you. Email address mostly, and phone number, and the location where you can meet them or find them. The other thing about this one that I was starting to tell you about, you guys, is this thing right here that we talked about, the thing that Dr. Janet Parker talked about, and I already gave you the document information how to find it. She wrote something interesting here that I think is worth mentioning. She wrote, torture as the most serious violation of the human right to personal integrity and dignity presupposes a situation of powerlessness, whereby the victim is under the total control of another person. Persons with disabilities often find themselves in such situations. For instance, when they are deprived of their liberty in prisons or other places, or when they are under the control of their caregivers or legal guardians. In a given context, the particular disability of an individual may render him or her more likely to be in a dependent situation and make him or her an easier target for abuse or abuse. However, it is often circumstances external to the individual that render them powerless, such as when one's exercise of decision-making and legal capacity is taken away by discriminatory laws or practices and given to others. I thought that was very brilliant. And that one was actually something that was From that conference in July 2008, it was actually the UN Conference on Human Rights. And the rapporteur was actually also kind of like a commentator or someone that you go to. Manfred Nowak is the one who said that. He also went on to say medical treatments of an intrusive or irreversible nature, when they aim at correcting or alleviating a disability, may constitute torture or ill treatment if enforced or administered without the free and informed consent of the person concerned. The administration and detention in psychiatric institutions of drugs, including neuroleptics that cause trembling, shivering, and contractions, and make the subject apathetic and dull, his or her intelligence, has been recognized as a form of torture. So the special rapporteur notes that forced and non-consensual administration of psychiatric drugs, and in particular of neuroleptics, for the treatment of a mental condition needs to be closely scrutinized. Depending on the circumstances of a case, the suffering inflicted and the effect upon the individual's health may constitute a form of torture or ill treatment. So there are a lot of things that were mentioned at this conference, and I believe that around that time, this is actually, she wrote this in 2016, and she's actually reporting from 2008, sorry. And my group and I, when we actually under the umbrella of the Human Dignity Council a couple of years ago, we're researching all of that, and we grabbed things from even as far as the 70s and 60s as far as research and non-consensual research. Issue number one that she mentioned that is very brilliant and I think worth mentioning, and by the way, I have 9 minutes. This is also going to be a 30 minutes long video. I hope it's worth the while. I hope that you get something out of it. The first part of this is called Torture, Abuse, and Ill Treatment in Healthcare Settings. And I'm not going to read the entire full page. I'm just going to give you a little bit of it because this is accessible online as a PDF file. And I've already given the title as to be Submission from Medical Whistleblower Advocacy Network to the United Nations Committee Against Torture on the list of issues for the USA. Done June 27, 2016. And the name is by Dr. Janet Parker, DVM, Medical Whistleblower Advocacy Network. And that's what we're talking about today. So you have a lot of crazy things going on, gang stalking that they talk about, which I call group stalking or cause stalking or persecution, marginalization, okay, hatred, another word, oppression. Take whatever you want out of this. So part one, I'm going to read a bit of that. She says, and I'm going to do it quickly because I don't have very much time left here. Medical abuse can amount to inhuman and degrading treatment and sometimes meet the criteria for torture. The prohibition of torture is one of the few absolute and non-derogable human rights. Abuses in healthcare must be examined from an understanding of the nature of these violations and be addressed from a torture protection framework. Okay, so now we get to the last part of it, which is what's interesting. Unequal relationship exists between health researchers and the patient, but health practitioners rarely acknowledge this conflict of interest in their dual roles as health practitioners who are also doing research on their own patients. Excuse me. Vulnerable patients who are used as research subjects excuse me, within a therapeutic doctor-patient relationship are not afforded the same level of protection as other research subjects, such as persons participating in a university or governmental agency research project. A large number of subjects are poor, disabled, children, racial minorities, and or prisoners. These unwitting human subjects have been subjected to deliberate infection with deadly or debilitating diseases, exposed to biological or chemical weapons, exposed to radiation or radioactive chemical, given mind-altering chemicals or toxins. Subjects were told that they were receiving medical treatment and reassured by the doctor who they believe will be acting in their best interest. Third-party surrogate decision-makers do not question whether medical professionals are doing what is in the best interest of the patient and thus force patients to comply with treatment plans devised by biased persons with conflicts of interest, and often vested financial and professional interest. And here's the other thing. Some of these human rights issues related to healthcare settings in CAT, which is, I think, the CAT stands for the Geneva Convention Against Torture. Okay, so that's what CAT stands for. Now the list goes as this. Number 1, human subject protection and unethical medical experimentation. Number 2, compulsory detention for a medical condition. Number 3, powerlessness and the doctrine of medical necessity. Number 4, evaluations of victims, survivors of torture, and the use of the Istanbul Protocol. 5, legal capacity and informed consent. 6, refusal to acknowledge the right to refusal. 7, domestic legislation allowing forced intervention. 8, non-consensual psychiatric interventions. 9, involuntary commitment in psychiatric institutions. 10, compliance-based behavioral interactions or interventions. 11, stigmatized identities. And then the list goes on. I'm going to finish that list. And again, I have 5 minutes left. Abuse of persons with disabilities, absolute ban on restraints and seclusion, criminal off-label promotion of pharmaceutical products, torture, ill treatment of people with psychosocial and intellectual disabilities, reproductive rights violations, abuses in drug detention centers, denial of pain treatment, abusive treatment of institutionalized forensic patients, torture, inhumane and degrading treatment in non-governmental drug rehabilitation centers, abusive treatment of person living with HIV/AIDS, abusive treatment of person who use drugs, abusive treatment of sex workers, legal capacity, informed consent, and stigmatized identities, abusive practices toward LGBTI. Now, number 2, need for protection of human subjects. And one thing that I noticed in this section here, number 2, on need of protection of human subject, is it's brilliantly written. She has all these different, she goes to the common rule, she goes to the Nuremberg Code, if anybody is familiar with the Nuremberg trial. She goes to even back to Hitler and his doctors and some of the nasty research and stuff that were done in the past. Oh boy. So, I mean, she gets deep into the thing, and you have to really read the PDF on your own. There's so many pages, there's so much information here. It's very good information, great sources. I mean, the entire page here that I'm showing you, that I'm reading, this entire thing is full of all, and everything, you can find all that in the Library of Congress. Library of Congress, yeah, I think that's what it's called, where all you can find it, under government website where things are declassified, or a special website where you can find declassified material from alphabet soup agencies. I'm not going to name them, but she names also examples of when all these things that she mentioned have been used, and in what cases, and what even some court cases, some precedent to look into. The number 3 parts is lack of oversight and transparency in guardianship cases, wards of the court. When wards of the court have surrogate decision makers for both legal and medical decisions, so that's people who are young, who somehow under the care of someone who makes a decision for them, for things to be done to them without really researching what exactly is done. Thus, wards are prevented even from effective appeal to the judge or even to the U.S. congressman. The USA mental health guardianship system offers few procedural protection and has spawned a profit-driven professional guardianship industry. So your guardian, your foster care parent, can actually sell you into the industry and give you away to be experimented on, okay, just to get some money, some quick cash. So there's so much in slavery, and it's just a lot of bad stuff going on. So I just want to thank God that I fell upon this document, and thank God for this platform that I'm going to use to the best of my capacity, and hopefully it will do good for you guys who fall upon it, that you will find some great information. Going again, deceptive pharmaceutical marketing practices, questionable prescribing practices. I mean, this is a document is so good, and there's other documents too that I found that I'm just going to share with you. Substituted decision-making power, lack of free, prior, and informed consent. This is really good stuff too. Definitely check this document out. Lack of understanding of human rights issues in healthcare settings. So good. Anyway, I want to just thank you guys for watching this. It's 30 minutes. I'm sorry it took so long. But I really appreciate that we have this platform that we can actually say truth, and we can share things that would essentially help people find freedom. Like I said, I found freedom in trusting and believing Christ and coming to knowledge of Him. And God loves you, and God loves those who turn to Him. He actually loves everybody, but he wishes that you would turn to him for help primarily. And then the rest, like being inspired to do things like that, like expose evil and really disgrace and shame the evil one by bringing light into things. So I hope that you were blessed, and I really hope that you're well, and you can get in touch with me, have a talk, why not, have coffee, tea, make a comment, whatever you feel like doing. I pray you're blessed, and keep the faith. Bye-bye.